China built a motorhome with a working elevator inside it, not a lift for bags, an actual elevator that carries a person up to a second floor that did not exist 5 minutes earlier. Push a button, the roof rises, glass walls unfold, and a hidden upper level appears above the driver's cab, big enough for a lounge, a table, and a view that looks nothing like a car window. This is not a concept sketch from an auto show. It is a real vehicle you can order in China right now for less than $500,000. And it is only one entry in a wave of motorhomes so advanced that engineers are running out of ways to describe what a motorhome is even supposed to be anymore. The vehicle causing all the noise is called the Maxus Life Home V90 Villa Edition, built by SAIC, one of China's largest automakers. On the outside, it looks like an oversized camper van. On the inside, it hides a two-story mechanism nobody in the West has matched. Two slide-out walls push open on the ground floor to create over 200 square feet of living space. A full kitchen with an induction cooktop, a lounge, and a bathroom with a real shower. Then the roof does something no motorhome roof is supposed to do. It rises straight up, unfolding glass panels that fold in half like a book, and reveals a second floor over 100 square feet wide, wrapped almost entirely in glass. That glass is not static. It switches between fully transparent and frosted at the touch of a button, so the same room can be a wide open observation deck or a private lounge in seconds. At the back of that upper floor sits a transparent screen that functions as a window when it is off and a television when it is on. Step outside onto a small balcony that unfolds directly above the driver's cab, and you are standing over the road with a glass of tea, one full story above where you started. Getting up there is the part people refuse to believe until they see the video. There is a single-person elevator built into the back corner of the main floor. You step in, the doors close, and it lifts you to the upper deck like you are in a boutique hotel, not a vehicle. SAIC has described the upstairs space as flexible enough to be a yoga studio, a study, or a traditional tea room. The price tag converts to around $413,000 before options. That sounds enormous until you compare it to where America's top-tier motorhomes live. The most expensive custom coaches built on Prevost shells in the United States regularly cross $1 million, sometimes two, and none of them have an elevator, a rising second floor, or glass that changes from clear to opaque on command. China is not just competing with the top of the American RV market. In some ways, it is already ahead of it for less than half the price. And the V90 is not an isolated stunt. It is the flagship of a much larger vehicle lineup from a company most Americans have technically already interacted with without knowing it. SAC Maxus is owned by SAC Motor, the same state-backed automaker that also owns the British sports car brand MG, which now sells electric hatchbacks across Europe. The engineering team that figured out how to fold a glass room into a truck roof is the same corporate family building mainstream electric cars sold on other continents right now. This is not a garage tinkerer's science project. It is a global auto manufacturer treating the motorhome as another product line worth the same research budget as its passenger cars. Here's where the story gets stranger. The company building some of these vehicles is not a scrappy startup chasing a trend. It is a Chinese state-owned industrial conglomerate. One of the most talked about double-decker motorhomes on the road right now, a Ford Transit-based coach nicknamed the Star Milk River, comes from a company called Hubei Qixing Group. Qixing is not primarily an RV company at all. It manufactures parking structures, industrial dyes, chemical storage tanks, and truck cabs, and it builds and exports roughly 100,000 truck cabs every single year, many of them heading straight to the United States and Canada as parts inside vehicles Americans already drive. On top of that, it exports another 50,000 electric truck chassis annually. Building a motorhome with a hydraulically lifting roof, engineers there call it the forehead lift, is a side project for a company that already ships industrial hardware into the American supply chain without most people ever noticing the name on the label. That double-decker coach sells for somewhere between $128,000 and $158,000, built on a standard Ford chassis so it can be driven with an ordinary license. When it is parked, the entire roof detaches from the body and rises upward like a cap lifting off a jar, revealing a full upper deck with seating, lighting, air conditioning vents, and enough room for 6 people to sleep across both levels. It looks less like camping equipment and more like a folding vacation home that happens to also be street legal. Fully closed up for driving, the whole thing measures under 20 feet long, narrow enough to fit in a regular parking space, and drive through an ordinary city street without anyone realizing what it turns into a few hours later. These are not the only 2 companies chasing this idea. Auto giants that most Americans have never heard of, including Chang'an and Wuling, both mainstream Chinese car makers, have launched their own electric and hybrid motorhome lines in the last few years, built directly on their existing electric vehicle platforms instead of traditional truck chassis. That matters because it means the entire Chinese auto industry, not just a handful of niche RV builders, has decided the motorhome is worth mass production tooling. When a company that already builds hundreds of thousands of electric cars a year decides to stretch that same platform into a camper, the resulting vehicle inherits an entire ecosystem of battery technology, software, and manufacturing scale that a small RV manufacturer in Indiana simply does not have access to. To understand why China jumped straight to this level of ambition, you have to understand something most people outside the country never think about. In China, sleeping overnight inside a moving or parked vehicle is not a novelty. It is completely normal. Long-distance sleeper buses, vehicles fitted with actual bunks instead of seats, have been a mainstream way to travel across the country for decades. Millions of people have already spent a night lying down inside a vehicle instead of a hotel room, long before any of these luxury motorhomes existed. In the United States and Europe, a bus with beds is treated as a curiosity, mostly reserved for touring musicians and their road crews. In China, it has quietly been ordinary infrastructure. That cultural head start is a big part of why Chinese manufacturers did not ease into the idea of a moving hotel. They built one because the country already trusted the concept before the marketing department ever got involved. That cultural comfort collided with a genuine consumer boom that most people outside China never saw happen. Starting around 2021, camping and outdoor travel exploded across the country, driven largely by people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s who wanted an escape that did not require a plane ticket. The camping market alone grew from roughly $1.1 billion in value in 2014 to a core market worth tens of billions of dollars within a decade, with the broader outdoor and camping economy, including gear, campgrounds, and vehicles, now estimated in the range of 1.4 trillion yuan, well over $190 billion. Online spending on outdoor equipment alone jumped by around 25% in a single recent year. Manufacturers watched an entire generation discover camping for the first time, all at once, with no pre-existing loyalty to a particular style of RV, and they built the most futuristic version of the product to capture that blank slate audience before anyone else could. The next generation of these vehicles is leaning even harder into technology most drivers have never seen in a motorhome. A newer company called SkyDream Caravans has unveiled a travel trailer concept built almost entirely around the same battery and smart home technology powering China's electric car boom. It carries a dual lithium battery pack with a combined capacity up to 85 kilowatt hours, roughly triple what many home battery backup systems hold, paired with rooftop solar and a charging port enough to run completely off-grid for up to 2 weeks. Every system inside, the lighting, the climate control, the blinds, can be controlled from a wall panel, a phone app, or simply by voice. Walk into the living room or bedroom and say the word for movie night, and the trailer lowers a 60-inch projector screen, dims every light, drops blackout shades over the windows, and reclines the furniture into viewing position automatically. It also comes with driver assistance technology, borrowed straight from passenger cars, including systems that can back the trailer into a parking spot without the driver touching the wheel, along with remote monitoring that lets an owner check battery levels, tank status, and interior temperature from a phone hundreds of miles away. The whole unit is designed to unfold and set up in under a minute, turning what used to be a 20-minute campsite routine into something closer to unlocking a hotel room door. What makes all of this financially possible is something most viewers never connect to motorhomes at all. China builds more electric vehicle batteries and solar panels than any other country on earth, and that manufacturing base has quietly rewired what counts as a standard feature on a Chinese RV. Lithium battery banks, rooftop solar arrays, induction cooktops, and full smart control systems that would cost thousands of dollars as optional upgrades on an American coach are treated as baseline equipment on mid-range Chinese models, not luxury add-ons reserved for six-figure flagships. A manufacturer building electric car batteries by the millions can drop a large lithium pack into a motorhome for a fraction of what it would cost a boutique American RV builder sourcing the same component in small batches. The elevator and the glass room get the headlines, but the real advantage sitting underneath almost every one of these vehicles is a battery supply chain built for an entirely different industry and repurposed for life on the road. None of this happened by accident, and it did not happen because millions of Chinese families were suddenly desperate to buy motorhomes. Here's the twist almost nobody talks about. Despite building some of the most advanced recreational vehicles on the planet, actual RV ownership in China remains almost non-existent. In North America, roughly 30 out of every 1,000 people own a recreational vehicle. In Europe, the number sits around 15 per thousand. In China, it is fewer than 0.2 of one person per thousand, a number so small it barely registers as a statistic. In a recent year, only around 14,000 new RVs were sold across the entire country, a population of over 1 billion people. That is a fraction of what a single mid-sized American state moves through its dealerships in the same 12 months. China has not caught up to Western RV culture. It has leapfrogged straight past the middle of the market and started building the most extreme version of the product first, almost as if the engineering came before the customers did. That gap is not an accident either. It is government policy. China's central planners wrote self-driving vacation tourism directly into the country's official 5-year economic plan, explicitly calling for new campsites, tourist infrastructure, and manufacturing support for the recreational vehicle supply chain. Behind that plan is real money. In a single recent year, the government backed roughly $5 billion in new investment, specifically to build 1,000 new campgrounds across the country, part of a broader outdoor recreation economy state planners have valued in the trillions of yuan. In most countries, RV culture grows slowly from the bottom, starting with retirees and weekend campers who eventually push manufacturers to build nicer products. In China, the government essentially decided the top-tier products should exist first, then built the campgrounds and incentives to create the customers to match it. National guidelines issued by multiple government ministries have specifically pushed for standardizing camping operations, expanding rural tourism infrastructure, and setting a long-term target of growing the entire outdoor sports industry to roughly 3 trillion yuan in value. Provincial governments have followed with their own incentives for manufacturers, land grants for campground developers, and tourism marketing campaigns built specifically around self-driving vacations. The elevator-equipped motorhome did not emerge from consumer demand. It emerged from industrial strategy, written into policy documents years before most of these vehicles ever rolled off a production line. And that strategy is already reaching beyond China's own borders. In 2023, Chinese-built recreational vehicles accounted for nearly 80% of all RV imports into Australia, a country with one of the most established RV cultures on Earth. That is not a small foothold. That is a takeover of an entire mature import market in the span of a few years, largely unnoticed outside the industry itself. Australian buyers did not choose Chinese RVs because of national loyalty. They chose them because the price to feature ratio beat everything else on the lot, the same math that is now pulling in buyers across parts of Europe and the Middle East. The United States has been far more difficult to crack, but not because the product cannot compete. American RV manufacturing is heavily concentrated in a single region of Indiana. An industry association representing hundreds of manufacturers there produces roughly 60% of the world's RVs and considers itself the backbone of a market worth well over $100 billion a year.
and that industry has been vocal about wanting protection from cheaper Chinese competition. In 2025, tariffs between the United States and China spiked dramatically, briefly pushing import duties on some Chinese goods above 100% before settling closer to a 10% baseline months later after negotiations between both governments. RV component shipments froze overnight, orders were canceled, and manufacturers on both sides scrambled to adjust pricing in real time. That trade wall is the main reason most Americans have never seen one of these vehicles in person. It is not a lack of ambition, and it is not a lack of demand. It is a tariff line on a spreadsheet in Washington, one that could be redrawn with a single trade announcement. So picture the moment those barriers come down, even partially, a country that already normalized sleeping in vehicles, that has state-owned industrial giants building elevators into motorhomes for less than half the price of comparable American luxury coaches, that is pouring billions of government dollars into campgrounds and manufacturing support, and that has already captured most of Australia's RV import market in a few short years. The only thing standing between that motorhome and a driveway in Ohio or Arizona right now is a trade policy that could change with a single announcement. Think about how quickly that same pattern played out in another industry. A decade ago, Chinese electric cars were treated as a punchline in the United States. Cheap knockoffs nobody serious would consider buying. Today, they dominate sales charts across Europe, Southeast Asia, and South America, built on exactly the same combination of state backing, battery manufacturing scale, and aggressive pricing now showing up in these motorhomes. The vehicles in this video are not a novelty act built to go viral for 30 seconds online. They are a preview of the same playbook, aimed at a different category of vehicle, tested first in markets where American tariffs cannot slow it down. China did not just build a fancier camper van, it built a working demonstration of what happens when a government treats a leisure product as a strategic industry, backs it with the same battery technology, reshaping global transportation, and prices it to undercut a market that has not been seriously challenged in decades. The elevator is the part that goes viral. The industrial strategy underneath it is the part that actually matters, and most of the world has not noticed yet.